Thank you for joining today. I'm Tousif Ahmed, and I'm going to talk about navigating the privacy landscape of GenAI on devices. Although I am presenting today, but I would also like to acknowledge Joe and Mina, who contributed to this presentation. Unfortunately, Mina couldn't join today due to travel issues, but I'm presenting here. So we are privacy engineers in the devices team at Google, and we are also part of applied privacy research team for the devices. So as members of the devices team at Google, we have a very unique privilege of reviewing the features in the device space, as well as part of the research team, we explore novel privacy considerations for emerging technologies. So this talk combines our insights from the reviewing experience, as well as our research on the GenAI space. So generative AI-based applications have gained immense popularity in the last few years. We probably saw that. And as we work on the devices, we have been anticipating that some of the features will be coming onto the devices. So here, device means that the model will be deployed on the device side to support the user experience. So GenAI can give unique capabilities to the user, and some of the use cases might be more useful when it is deployed on the device side. In fact, we have been seeing some very useful applications that have been released on the device, like content generation. We can use text prompt to generate content. In the Recorder app, we can use GenAI to summarize the audio recording. And there are content modification apps where we can use text and image modification. In some of the recent announcements, we probably saw that multimodal GenAI is coming. Some announcements showed conversational application on the phone, where the user can interact with an agent powered by GenAI. There is visual assistant, where you can use device's camera for the to learn more about the objects in the surroundings. And there is this interesting example of activity retrieval that can take snapshots of the user's activity on the devices, and those snapshots can later be used for recalling some of the prior activities. So as you can see, all these applications are very useful for the user, but they can also be very sensitive. And we can mitigate some of this concern by putting the model on the device. But that is not the end of the privacy. There are much more to it. There are many benefits of on-device deployment, like it is faster, but definitely the privacy story will not end there. Because all these applications will be deployed on the devices, which can contain sensitive information. So we need to consider what types of devices are involved. Another factor is these models might be smaller version of the original model. So it might have a little bit of lower performance. That could indicate that it might have a little bit of higher privacy risk. So the problem with that, with any privacy risk, is that when we are deploying that on the devices side, and we found out any vulnerability later, we have low control, because if there is vulnerability and we want to fix that, it will not be easy to fix. It will depend on the device, depend on the user's connection, and a lot of other factors. So there might be this vulnerable model that will be out there. So we need to consider all these factors. So we believe that right now we're in a very early phase of these applications. We are focusing more on the model development part. But as we got to see more on-device applications, we need to think about how the application will be developed using the GenAI, also how it will be deployed, and how you can do the maintenance. So today's talk will mostly focus on this application part. And we assume that the model will stay on the device, and the model was developed with the best privacy practices. So think about this case. We have developed a very extremely good model that can do some cool features. So we want to deploy that on the device. What are the privacy risks that we need to consider? As I said, we need to think about the devices. What devices are involved? Is it a single user device, or there can be multiple user device? Or if there is multiple devices involved, like for example, it will be deployed on both phone and watches. There can be many sensitive sensors. What are the sensors involved? How the user will interact with the devices? And some of the use cases could be very sensitive, like fitness tracking, health tracking, also biometric, and the device users. We need to understand that not only the device owners are the only users of this application, there can be other users like friends, family members, and other stakeholders as well. So while doing the risk assessment, we need to think about all these dimensions, like use case, device type, sensor type, and the interaction mode. So if we are doing that, like we are doing for some sensitive use cases, for multiple users, definitely it has a higher risk of privacy, and we need to address that by putting more control and access control on those models. The second part we also need to consider is the privacy risk of these on-device models, particularly what types of data that GenAI model can take as input. If it takes user-generated input, it might have lower risk. There can also other information like device information, contextual information, user details. And then if it involves any sensitive information like biometric or PII, it will become more risky. The output of the model needs to be also considered. It can be generative. It can have some informational output, or it can suggest some action, or it can be imitate the user's behavior. For example, making a call for the user to imitate the user's action. So definitely those are risky and need to be closely evaluated. Another part is, this is a very important part, the fine-tuning. How the fine-tuning will happen. It is happening on the device or on the server side. If the data is leaving the device, then it will not have the on-device privacy anymore. And if we are doing the fine-tuning on the device, we need to do it in a privacy-preserving way. And if we are sharing the model, definitely you need to do it in a privacy-preserving way so that it doesn't reveal any information about that particular user. So these are some of the considerations for risk during the design and development phase. We need to consider the deployment scenario, how the model will be deployed. Will it be pre-installed model, or is it something that the user can install from any app marketplace? So the pre-installed version has higher risk because the user have less user control and transparency. But another factor is that these pre-installed applications often have API to share their services with other applications, so the model could be accessed by other applications. So this has higher risk. And for the user installed application, the user have more control. They can install or uninstall any of the application. Finally, we also need to think about the complete life cycle, the model life cycle on the device. That is the maintenance part. How the model will be initialized. So that will start with the model download phase. How the model will be deployed and how it will start its downloading. It should be downloaded after the user start using the application or after the user started the device. And probably for the initialization part, it involves some of the user data. We need to understand how the user data will be collected. Is it after installing the app or before the user installed the app? So these are some of the factors that we need to consider during the model initialization phase. Then once the user start interacting with the model, there are many, many factors to consider. Some of the examples are like how the user shares data, how the user data will be retained, then the model output, are you going to store it on the device side? If it's device side, then we have to protect that. And another part is model access, like if any of the third-party application or other application is going to use any of the model services. If that is going to happen, we need to maintain proper privacy for that. Then model update. So this is very important because we assume that the model that is going to be deployed, it's not the final model. There might be more. For example, if there is a vulnerability, we probably need to update the model. We probably need to collect data from one device and update the model, and probably need to transfer the same model to other devices. So multi-device synchronization is important. If it involves fine-tuning, as I said before, it needs to be involved in a privacy-preserving way. Finally, if the user decides to delete the app or the end of the cycle can also happen when the user stop using the devices. For example, they want to buy a new device, or they want to use a new device. So on those cases, the model life cycle need to be ended. So we need to identify that like if the user is not interacting with the app, and probably we can delete the model to preserve the privacy and also the security of the model itself. So these are some of the risks that we considered. Definitely, this is very exploratory, and we need to consider many other factors. So what are the things that we can mitigate the risk? So for the mitigation, we are considering that like we can adopt some of the previous approaches to ensure the application privacy and safety. We have taken similar approaches before, so we probably need to expand that for the GenAI use cases. And the way I like to divide is that we can give user more control. We can expand some of the existing policies and develop technical approaches. So for user control, we can consider adding more privacy and transparency to about the model. For example, before downloading the application from the app marketplaces, the user can know that like whether it involves any GenAI model, whether what types of GenAI model is involved, and how the fine-tuning will happen. We can also give more control through in-app permissions and system settings. Like the user can allow or deny some of the data that they want to share for further training or not. We can also expand some of the policies. Some of the policies can be divided into model storage, model access, user data retention, and model retention itself. So model storage need to be restricted, and also the model access need to be logged. So some of the policies can be extended for the GenAI model use cases. And finally, we can explore more on the technical solution. The technical solution can involve privacy-enhancing technologies like federated learning, but as we learned in the previous talk, federated learning on the devices is tough, and unlearning is also tough. So it has its limitations, so we need to invest more on the federated learning with large generative models, and it is still hard because there are like billions of parameters involved, so we need better approach, and we need to work on this for the further improvement. Google also released AI Core, which is the Edge SDK for model management. Like it handles the model management, runtime, and safety features. We need similar approaches for other operating system and other devices. Another effort for the technical solution is the adversarial testing that when the model is going to be deployed. So the engineers with privacy backgrounds can be involved for detecting potential misuses. And we can also develop more technical controls for the users to limit the privacy exposure, like deletion of these personalized models or creating private mode where the user's data will not be stored. So that are some of the findings and some of the exploration that we did for the on-device GenAI space. Definitely, we have seen some potential risks and ways to mitigate, and we need more formal exploration in this space because this is kind of a very challenging space, and we need more brain to explore this area. So today's talk is kind of an invitation to the community so that they consider the device space and invest more on the risk mitigations. And we'll also be investing more time and resources. And so the takeaway for this talk is that on-device privacy might not be enough. We need to consider other factors, like what will be the model lifecycle on the devices. There are certainly some risk mitigation strategies that might work, but definitely we need more attention in this case. We believe that generative AI model capabilities are evolving very fast, and we need to catch up on the privacy policy and definitely technical controls. So that's all. I'd be happy to answer some questions. And also, Joe is here. Feel free to reach out to him for any other questions.